The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
Hey, it's episode number 128, and it is 179 days till the man burns as of this recording. This one, the intro, not the interview that you're about to hear. The interview you're about to hear was actually recorded this past June when I was in New York. Today's episode is an interview with Leon Feingold. He is the co-founder of New York Dangerous. Leon and I actually got in touch on my first ever trip to New York like 4 years ago. Then we finally got around to connecting this last time I was there, and then the episode is finally seeing the light of day a few months later. So today's episode might be designated with the dubious title of being the longest running pre- and post-production timeline of any episode of this show ever. Which is hilarious when you consider Leon's personality and his energy, because he is a guy who is running on all cylinders all of the time. We recorded the interview you're about to hear on a rainy morning on the Lower East Side, right before my flight back to Southern California. We met up, and I helped him bring a bunch of things in from his van that he had just picked up on his way over to meeting me for his charity, which we will learn about shortly. And we did this as he juggled 2 phone calls and 3 other communications, like via text. The hurricane of energy settled long enough for us to finally start. Leon felt to me, gave me a ride to the train station afterwards. He was like the perfect human manifestation of New York City at rush hour. If New York's traffic lanes grew legs, if that energy grew legs and arms and started going to Burning Man, his name might be Leon. Leon shared with me stories of his upbringing, which included, without a doubt, the finest fake it till you make it anecdote I've ever heard. He is active in Mensa, not the first guest on this show who has been, and his journey does end up eventually, obviously, at Burning Man, and he shares the really powerful and emotional story behind the founding of the House of Good Deeds, one of the largest all-volunteer charities in New York, which was also very inspired by his experience as co-founding the Burning Man camp New York Dangerous. So, full circle. That's how we ended up connecting initially, and that's how I get to learn the history of his camp and all the amazing other work that he's doing. There's quite a bit happening in this episode, and all delivered in a very articulate manner with rapid-fire energy. After this chat, you'll be treated to an amazing live set, more like a live show, with Washington, D.C.-based Alex Oz. Also on the decks for this set is James Dank, who also played live drums, Disco Valente playing live sax, and Tori Beek on the guitar. This amazing live show was recorded at Catharsis on the Mall in 2019. That's a 10 Principle event in Washington, D.C. under the shadow of the Washington Monument, which you can learn more about over at catharsisonthemall.com. It's a real trip. Alex is a part of the New York Dangerous crew, and this is a high BPM, funky as fuck mix you might turn the volume up for after this interview with Leon. But before we start, I do want to take a brief minute to express that the hearts of our entire Burner podcast team, network, and family really do go out to the people of the Ukraine. As a child of war myself, I can tell you that this is an absolutely devastating experience, without a doubt. And yet somehow we persevere. We've been seeing so much evidence of folks out there heroically continuing to show up for their communities in any which way they can. A partner of mine actually works with a team out of the Ukraine and was sharing with me how heroically they made the decision to continue to show up for work because they decided that they get to own their human experience, their individuality, because they were not about to let things out of their personal sphere of control affect their lives and their sense of personal power. That's how evil wins, in whichever form or shape it may manifest as in any of our respective realities. If you're listening in the Ukraine, we love you. Love is a verb, as an intention to truly see you. Even if we may not have the physical capacity to contribute in a manner that can be immediately quantified. With that, I would like to bring us back around to the thing that unifies and unites us across international borders. our Burning Man community, and its reach all the way across the globe. Zero in your focus with me from the global scale to one person doing the best that he can with what he has available to him. Let's get to know a guy you might have met on Playa and was a little bit curious about. That's what we're doing today. Today's episode is entitled Responsible Hedonism. I go by Mr. Arash even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was the fly with the buzz and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no name.
That's perfect. I'm just going to use that. I'm going to get that recording and add some good kick drums to it. Dude, you're like, you operate at all cylinders.
I do my best. I'm sort of like a V12. I don't know how this works. I just go.
That's so interesting because I feel like as a fellow larger person, I tend to like move a little bit slower in order not to feel like a bull in a china shop. But you're like pedal to the metal.
I'm not a stranger to the bull in china shop experience. I tend to be extremely large in personality as well as body, so I'm no stranger to knocking things over. But I always apologize, and I try to be a little aware of where I am. Doesn't always work.
That works perfectly. What are you? I'm going to get into all of that as well. Tell our listeners where we are right now.
So we are right now at a brand new building for us. Down in the Lower East Side, it used to be a senior center and is now a space that has been donated temporarily to the charity that New York Dangerous founded. We created it called the House of Good Deeds, and we're actually one of the largest volunteer-based organizations in New York City right now. We've rescued 500,000 pounds of clothing, shoes, housewares, furniture, electronics, appliances, everything from the trash, and we collect things and give them away for free in line with the 10 principles of Burning Man.
That is incredible.
Isn't it? Pretty awesome.
Yeah, and there is so interesting because I've been spending a lot more time in Brooklyn the past couple of months, and there is like a never-ending stream of available like furniture and couches and things that people toss out, and neighbors will go and grab them, and but you've decided to kind of take that process to the next level and directly get it to the people that are in need.
I actually see it a lot like the way that people try to take the Burning Man experience and bring it to the default world. The same ideas apply to like the stooping community and the curbing community and rescuing things. Like New York City, I don't know about Tucson, but New York City is a city. It's such a dichotomy. It's like a tale of two cities within one. We have so much waste and excess and surplus, but we also have so much need. So one of the things that we realize is that if we can take the idea of rescuing these useful things, taking surplus from where it is, and helping people get it to where it needs to go, not just doing it all ourselves, but teaching people that they can do it themselves, that it's not hard to take the ideas, whether it's from Burning Man or from these stooping groups, taking the ideas that work and would improve the world and just putting it into the zeitgeist of everyone's imagination, that their first reaction can and should be not, hey, let's throw this out, but hey, how can we upcycle, recycle, reuse this?
Yeah, that's brilliant. How long has your charity organization existed officially?
It started 4 years ago. We just passed our 4-year anniversary back in March. It has a
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. It has a crazy backstory, and we can get into that if you want to.
I would love to. I want to. You said you're one of the largest charity organizations in New York.
We are the one of we may. I don't think we are, but I think we're one of the largest volunteer, like exclusively volunteer organizations in New York. We do a lot of the same things that sort of like a cross between like a New York Cares and a Goodwill and like a lot of these other organizations do, but they all have staff, they all have overhead, and we are completely staffed by volunteers. Our organizers, everything we have is donated, and any expenses we have come out of our own pockets.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's and it's interesting because like my first time in New York was a couple of years ago, and a friend that I was staying with at that time kept saying New York is a lot like Burning Man. And I remember whenever I sort of heard that, I was like, I can't figure out what you mean by that. And whenever I would mention it to other people, they'd be like, I don't get it. It's like so commodification. There's so many ads. How could New York be like Burning Man? But now that I've spent a significant amount of time here, I get what she was getting at. There is this sense of like shared community when dealing with like physical hardship. There is this energy of you could leave your house and you got to make sure to pack your things for the day because you might not end up back and you're going to end up on some wild adventure. And it might not be an art car, you know, that's like a disco fish or something, but you'll end up on some sort of New York manifestations versions of an art car. And so just even this energy of like taking lessons from the playa and applying it to New York City, to me, it seems like it should like land perfectly on top of like the culture over here.
Like I said, Tale of Two Cities, just as much as there is commodification, there is creativity, there is originality, there is community. And man, I miss Disco Fish.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I will say that New York has that a lot of other cities and communities don't is a sense of permissiveness and encouragement to follow your own path and do your own thing.
Yeah.
New York has, in addition to its amazing art scene and music scene and just the sheer number of people that you'd think would have the skills and the interest in a burner community, we still live in a world that kind of pressures people to be normal, to fit in. And in New York, there is a huge community that pushes back against that and says, you know what, you do you. And I think that also overlaps really well with the burner mentality.
100%. Yeah. No, I've definitely like, you know, I call San Diego home, and yeah, radical self-expression most definitely is in full effect.
Yeah, that also explains your tan.
Yeah, here in the sun. Are you originally from New York?
Yeah, technically born in New York City. I grew up in Long Island, but I was born in a hospital just over the border into Far Rockaway, Queens. Yeah. So yes, I'm a New York City boy.
Look at that, your whole life here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a very big difference between growing up in suburbia in Oceanside, Long Island, as opposed to living in the city. And there's a very big difference between those two. I felt when I was growing up that I was worlds away, even though it was less than an hour. Yeah. But I think it had a big impact on the way I grew up.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, I was a dork. I was awkward. I didn't fit in. Super self-conscious. Always had the intelligence to be popular, but never had the confidence to do so. So I was kind of the class clown. Was really good in sports, but I was always picked last because nobody liked me. I was, you know, in elementary school we'd play Kill the Carrier, and it wound up just being Jump on Leon because, you know, that's just how it worked. Yeah. And you know that really affected a lot of how I look at the world. And you know, I think a lot of people who were super popular growing up kind of burned out early, but a lot of the coolest people that I know, both in and out of the burner scene, are people who didn't really fit in or didn't toe the line, so to speak, and found their own paths and found their own self-confidence, moving past the things that make you popular in elementary and high school, and found their success in the world in a way that really makes them, it's a recipe for longer-term success. And I'm glad that I kind of saw the whole world from the outside in, rather than having it be important to me to be part of the in-group from the time I was young.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I wonder... Do you still feel that sense though? Because there's like this deeply rooted thing. Like I'm in complete agreement with you that the outsiders are always like all the coolest people, like in the long run. Culture is always shifted by those who are willing to like break out of whatever the norm is and not play it safe. But yeah, but especially in like a high school environment, when you fall in line and you just do that really, really well, that is what makes you cool. Do you ever still experience that today? Like that kind of like deeply rooted sense of like, am I cool enough? Or is it fully like, you're like, I am fucking way cooler than I've ever been?
I can confidently say that I am fucking way cooler than I have ever been. Honestly, it's looking back, I realized how awkward I was. And I'm glad that I went through the awkward, self-conscious, insecure phase, because learning how to handle that and how to handle my emotions and learning what mattered has really changed my life. And so many things in my life now are things that are important to me. And I shudder to think where my life would be if I focused all my time on things that were important to other people, whether or not they were well-intended. Could have been family or peer pressure, media, clergy, whomever had an influence on me. It took a while for me to learn the lesson that the most important person who knows what is best for me is me. And I spent a lot of time figuring out who I was, because a lot of people don't even know.
Yeah.
And once I figured out what mattered to me and why, and I developed like a clear worldview, I then started applying it to every part of my life. And I try to be supportive of everyone. I try to listen to everyone. I try to be even-handed. I try to live the best life that I can. But I've learned that I'm happiest and feel most accomplished when I see myself as a responsible hedonist, meaning that I always have to respect other people's autonomy, but it's my responsibility to learn what matters to me and why, and pursue those things.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember by any chance a story or a specific experience that kind of illustrates a bit of what you were describing right now? Like, I almost want to say, like, did you look around at the quote unquote cool kids and go like, I don't understand why they're the cool kids because I'm obviously cooler?
No, when growing up, I never thought I was cooler. I mean, the difference for me was confidence, self-confidence, because everyone, when you don't have information, your brain fills in the blanks with whatever's around you, and very often it's what you've heard from kids on the playground or from things you've read. This is pre-internet, so growing up, I was like, well, where do I get information? Where do I look to see how can I be successful? Luckily, I was a good athlete, so I found some self-confidence from being successful in sports. Yeah. But even then, I was never able to translate that kind of confidence into my personal life. I do have a pretty good story, however. When I was in high school, I never, like I said, I was a class clown. I was only popular because my senior year, I beat up the class bully in a fight that he kind of jumped me and I kicked his ass. And it was actually a great story. And
slow clap.
I was always a bit of it was totally a slow clap situation. I put him in a sling. He got suspended for weeks, and people were like high-fiving me, and like people I didn't even know were like, "Good job, Leon." And I was like, "Who are you people? Why didn't you ever invite me to any of your parties?" So by the time I graduated high school, I'd literally never gone on a date, never went to my prom, I literally never had a conversation with a girl more than like a couple of sentences. Like I thought women were aliens. And it was like, how when you do something wrong, like all like the parents know and then your mom gets you in trouble. So I kind of thought it was like that kind of communication system. Like I would say one thing embarrassing and then like the whole school would know. Yeah. So you know how they say better to keep your mouth shut and be thought of as a moron than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Yeah.
So same sort of thing. So I avoided any situations where I might be seen as even more awkward or weird than I was. So when I graduated high school, my parents got me my graduation gift was a teen tour to Israel. And I looked at the names of the people. They gave you a little packet of who you're going to be camping with. It was 39 girls and 20 guys.
Okay.
And it was like 2 to 1. I was thinking to myself,
ratio. Yeah.
Exactly. And the point was no one there knew me. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, all right, well, you know what? If I'm ever going to talk to a girl, I got to figure out how to do it now.
Yeah.
So I decided that I was going to pretend to be the most popular kid in my school, or at least one of them. I just picked this random kid who was always like at all the cool parties. He was an athlete. Like never talked to me. He was actually a bully.
Yeah.
But he always seemed to be, which is why I'm not going to say his name, Richard Mastantino. And he...
We'll link to his Facebook.
Yeah, he... I don't know. I just thought to myself, all right, well, what would he do in this situation? And I challenged myself. Whatever he would do, whatever I thought he would do, I would do it. No second guessing myself, no questions. Just do it. If I was going to talk to a girl, if I thought he would talk to a girl, I would talk to her. If I thought he was going to say something clever, I would say it.
That's fascinating.
And it actually worked to the point, like we got to the airport, sat in a big circle, and everyone's like, okay, so tell us your name and give us an adjective to describe yourself that starts with the initial of your name.
Okay.
And everyone's like, oh, well, my name's Beth, and I'm, beautiful or whatever. So it came around to me, and I'm like, my name's Leon, but I wish we were Adam because I'm awesome. And everyone laughed. Everyone's like, wow, all right, cool guy, clever, funny. And I was like, wow, that was easy. So I just kept going, and like I started talking to everybody. I just, being in a place where it was like a proving ground. It was like it's like before you play a game, you get to go online and you have like a trial run where like, if you get shot, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like a trial ground where nobody knew me. I could have been the most awkward guy like I was, or I could have been the most popular guy nobody knew.
Yeah.
And the only difference was how I approached it.
Yeah.
And going through that experience, I mean, on the plane, I wound up like chatting with this girl who was brilliant and sexy and funny. And we were like chatting, and we just made new friends, and I introduced myself to people, and I had my first kiss ever on that plane with that girl who was sitting next to me from Boston. And I was thinking to myself, my God, this is so effing brilliant. Like, there's really nothing standing between me and popularity except me.
Yeah.
And having that experience and going through that, I mean, there were obviously some growing pains, but like that experience taught me that I was really just a prisoner of my own fear and insecurity. And once I can move past that, it was, fear kept me safe. It protected me, but it also kept me from growing. And learning that and being able to push past that protective embryo of fear helped me become what I would think is a better person, more capable of handling myself in situations. And it's a learning experience I've never forgotten.
Yeah. Oh, that is beautiful. That's giving me a bunch of inspiration. And it's also like the parallel I'm making is that this story you just told, very often I will at some point hear this story from my interview guest later on in the interview when they've started to discover like Burning Man. About the idea of like that I can create this new identity and there's nothing holding me back from being this new identity other than the fear or whatever, and it's actually more of me from the inside that's coming out.
I think the difference is that many people find Burning Man and it opens up worlds to them. I think I always was a burner.
Yeah. What kind of work did your parents do? What kind of world did you live in?
Grew up in middle-class suburbia. Dad was an accountant. Mom was a teacher.
Okay. Teacher. Yeah, I said DJ at first.
Oh, no, that would be pretty awesome. No, she was a regular public school teacher. She also taught yoga.
Yeah.
So I guess that's about as far burner as we'd ever gotten.
Yeah.
Dad was my scoutmaster. He was never super athletic. He was actually really overweight. He was like your traditional Jewish accountant with glasses. He was also like, 6'3" and 325 pounds. Like he was a massive man.
Yeah.
But he was never an athlete really. But he was the coach of our, he volunteered to coach with our soccer team. He volunteered to be the scoutmaster. Like he loved doing things with his kids.
Right.
And unfortunately he passed away, 20 years ago this year actually. But he was very impactful on my life, as of course all of our parents are.
Sure.
But I wouldn't say there was anything burnery
Yeah.
in that relationship. It was just, normal middle class suburbia.
Yeah. Did you go to college around here?
I went to school in upstate New York in Albany.
Okay.
And I did my law school. I'm also an attorney.
Okay.
I went to law school at Hofstra, also on Long Island.
Okay. So after school, I'm assuming I guess I'm just kind of trying to figure out at some point Burning Man gets introduced into your consciousness.
Not till much later. I mean, I had actually been to...
Let's fill that gap.
Okay, let's do that. So I have a couple of hippie cousins.
Okay.
So our family is, there's me and my sister. Pretty much everyone in my family has there's a pair of parents and like a couple kids, and that's pretty much it. But we're reasonably far flung. I have my mother's brother's kids are in California. I have another set of cousins who's in Florida, but definitely into the spiritual realm, like the dippy, hippie, trippy kind of people. And I kind of figured like one of those people would be into like the dirty hippies at Burning Man, because I thought it was all drugs. Actually, pretty much that's it. I thought it was all just like a drug-fueled surreal experience in the desert, and it turned out to be exactly that. But I was never into drugs, and I'm still not. Like, I was an athlete. I was never like into fitness, but I was just into, you know, living this world as best I could. And the whole idea of like needing drugs or needing anything really was anathema to me. Like, why would I need to alter my experience when the real world is so amazing and there's so much to learn, there's so much to do. And of course, you know, growing up, you hear all these stories about how people like take LSD and their brain cracks and they're never the same. I was like, well, what do I need that for? What do I need to run that risk? So I remember years ago, I went out to visit my family, and somebody mentioned, hey, do you want to go to Burning Man? It's next weekend. And I was like, nah, it's not my cup of tea. Like, I won't go. What's the point? And this is back in like the late 90s. And it wasn't, I never really thought about it until 2011. I went to a party, and I met this girl who, I mean, she just seemed really cool. She was very different. And it wasn't like a burner party necessarily. It was an anti-Valentine's Day party that one of my friends had thrown.
Double anti.
Yeah. So it was a Valentine's Day party.
Okay.
But because there were too many anti-Valentine's Day parties, so he thought, you know what, let's just do an anti-Valentine's Day party.
I love it.
His name's Sydney. He's super active in the community here, and he doesn't even go to Burning Man that much anymore. But he is like New York City's version of Burning Man in an individual. Like, he'll drag around this trampoline of doom everywhere. He organizes flash mobs at ice skating rinks. Like, he is the most creative, unusual, awesome, one of the most amazing New Yorkers that I know. And if you ever hear this, Sydney, you're awesome, but you knew that. He's just a fun, great guy. Anyway, so he had this party and he invited, I guess this girl just showed up and she was interesting. And we just started talking and we wound up like we're wearing like fancy outfits. I think it was a formal, I might be remembering this wrong, but I think we were supposed to dress in formal wear. So I might have been in a tux and she might have been in an evening gown. And we wound up doing like a push-up contest because we were talking about like her military service and I was talking about like how I was just starting to get fit again. And we wound up dating. And at some point she's like, oh, you know, you seem like you are into the Burning Man community. I'm like, I have no idea what that is. She said, well, I just got really into it because she had gone for the first time, I think the year before. And she introduced herself as not her name, but her playa name. And I was like, oh, so even now she goes by her playa name. Like, people don't even know what her real name is. And it was, the way she described it was not about the drugs. It was not about the hedonism part, but it was about the art and the experience and the tabula rasa that the playa was. And she made me start thinking about it in a different way. And she said, well, there's this thing coming up called Playa del Fuego, PDF. And she says she goes every year. So why wouldn't I go? So I looked into it and I went, and it was amazing. It was so much fun. It was more than just fun. It was eye-opening to see so many people who had the same mindset that I did in terms of, you know, the principles, the idea of the principles before I even knew what they were. Yeah. And it just really, it opened my eyes in a way that I wasn't expecting at all. I thought it was just like, you know, a camping trip, and it turned out to be a mind-opening adventure.
Right.
So when she said, hey, check out the, would you want to come to Burning Man with me? You can come with our camp. We've got room. In fact, she camped with a camp called a Shack of Sit, which was part of Snowflake Village. And she was involved. Actually, her camp, there's a whole village. Yeah. But if you guys know Snowflake Village, it has a Shack of Sit, which is actually the Mensa camp. And I've been a member of Mensa forever. I'm a past president of the New York chapter.
Interesting.
So I was like, oh, wow, even smart people go to this. So I contacted them, and they said, hey, do you have room for me? And they did. So I camped with them, really close to, you know, my friend, and we had this adventure together. And I said, this is brilliant. And that's how I went to my very first burn in 2012. And I have not missed one since, except for when they decided to cancel it. This would have been my 10th year in a row.
Wow, that is amazing. First of all, the story of doing push-ups at an anti-Valentine's Day party is like an excellent meet cute for a romantic comedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sometimes think a lot of my relationships would look good on screen.
A lot of mine look good on paper. Do you, and this is one of the questions that I always enjoy asking, do you have a memory of like that first night or first day on Playa where that like explosion happened for you, where like you really saw it and something hit your gut, like, wow, look at this thing. This is real and it's insane.
There's so much.
Yeah.
It was such a novel experience for me. Luckily, my partner had prepped me pretty well, and I had done my research on my own to make sure that I wasn't going to die. I was going to have everything. So I think, I mean, there were so many, pretty much everything. There's not one that stands out for me right now. Although I will say Gate Road was, just coming in on Gate Road was an amazing experience. Just kind of like the experience is about to start. And it's still about to start. And you get to read all these signs at the side of the road letting you know it's about to start. And all these sayings like Burma Shave style, like all these, sayings and it's still about to start. And it's not starting. You're spending an hour on this goddamn road about to start.
It's a good build-up.
It is. And you felt like you were going through a portal almost, like from the default to the burn.
Right.
And it wasn't just as simple as a camp out. It wasn't just as simple as a festival. It was a transition from what you were to what could be. And my first burn was incredible. And every burn since then has been incredible, just in a different way. And I think rather than a particular experience, a thought is the most revolutionary for me. And people say it's impossible to describe Burning Man, because it is. But for me, it's not a music festival or an art festival or a drug festival. It's an experience festival. It's an experience engine. It's a blank slate where you can try and do everything. And the thought that I had that changed it for me and made me want to bring the spirit of the Playa back to the default was the realization that despite, the infrastructure that was there, the porta potties and, okay, you're here, you're being placed here. Everything that was there happened because somebody thought of it, somebody like you or me, and they made it happen.
Yeah.
Either by themselves or as a team of 100 people. Yeah. But everything from, a flaming octopus to charcade to like the littlest piece of art to the most boring class to the most amazing deep playa structures was just somebody's idea. And they just worked without, corporate funding, without the economies that need to go into nearly everything else in the world. Was just, if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere. Everything that is amazing, I could do with a group of people. And there's no reason it can't happen anywhere else.
Yeah, I've always laughed that like it's like people in a lot of the world might have like some drunken idea about, wouldn't it be funny if we did this thing and this thing? And at Burning Man, people actually do it.
Mm-hmm. That's totally true. And so much of my life is like that. Like so many people have misconceptions, and you can't fight everyone's misconceptions. You can't. All you can do is just keep, figuring out your truth and living it, and being a good role model, modeling behavior for other people. And when you meet people that have different ideas, you have conversations with them and you ask them Socratic questions and you open their minds if you can. But you can't reach everyone. That was another thing I had to learn. You can't teach everyone. You can't reach everyone. There's always going to be, the Pareto principle of 20 and 80. You can't spend 80% of your time trying to convince the 20% of people that don't know you or support you or like you, not based on anything you did most of the time, but just based on, their perception of who you are, what you represent, either as a burner or as, anything else. You're going to represent something negative to a lot of people.
Right.
And most of the time they're wrong, but you can't spend 80% of your energy trying to correct the impressions that people have of you. Totally. That took me a long time to learn.
Totally. To me, what you're describing right now is connecting back to, like before we started recording, we were making Star Trek jokes because you said you did the Riker maneuver when you sat down. and the real Star Trek fans here will understand that reference. But one thing about Star Trek, Next Generation specifically, is what I grew up on, and the show is overwhelmingly, in my opinion, an excellent workshop. Like, it's all about consent. They're constantly doing consent check-ins. When they're about to bring technology to a world that has suddenly achieved warp drive, and they're ready to be welcomed to the new Federation and be a part of this bigger galaxy, a big chunk of that conversation is about, do I have your consent to take you up to the ship? Do I have your consent to show you this technology? This kind of thing. And I kind of feel like when you're describing the 80-20 thing, I was like, it's really consent on some level. Like, people still have to give you their consent to open up their minds to the experience that you want to invite them to.
You can't force people to be ready for something like this.
Yeah.
They have to be ready on their own. You can guide them, you can answer questions, but they have to be the ones who are ready for it. You can't force, a caterpillar to become a butterfly. You can't force a flower to open early. Wow, what the hell is wrong with me with all these? Am I a poet now? What the hell just happened to me?
I love it, man.
What did you do to me?
You're on flow. Maybe you just needed a microphone this whole time.
I don't know. Well, I don't know. When I sat down, I was like, ooh, karaoke. But yeah, I mean, consent is a big part of my life regardless. I'm active in the sex positive community. I was a co-founder of several other organizations. I did a TED Talk on polyamory. So consent is a big deal. But I think my experiences through the burn community helped shape that part of my life as well.
Yeah.
I am wondering, however, how much consent there was in the original series.
Oh, yeah. No. It's all...
Kirk had a lot of privilege he threw around, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There's quite a bit of... there's no piece of art that we can look at that doesn't have a fuck ton of problems we can review.
There's a problem with being a purist. You can't look at songs from 50 years ago with today's views.
Yeah.
So you can't look at Sirius from 40 years ago with today's views either.
Well, I mean, that what you're describing is happening faster than ever too. You can't look at something that came out last fucking week and things are constantly changing. And
but we live in a world where people don't know enough about history. They don't respect it or whatever. So they judge everything by current standards.
Right.
And that's politics, that's music, that's behavior.
Right.
And I'm for example, I'm not going to say that what some people who have publicly been lambasted for doing something wrong shouldn't have been. Of course they should. But there is a very fine line between looking at behavior now as opposed to looking at what's acceptable at the time a song was written, for example, or an interaction took place. Baby, It's Cold Outside.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very rapey song. Well, you know what? At the time, that was a woman was expected to put up token resistance even if she wanted to, and a man was supposed to overcome it. The old Hollywood saying, if a man kisses you, slap him. Yeah. And if a woman kisses you, kiss her. Like if she slaps you, kiss her. Like whatever. Like that whole golden age of Hollywood. Like that's the way people were raised. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense by today's culture. I have a problem with people applying today's culture to yesterday's art.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely like a whole conversation because for me, it even goes back to like looking at historically, like things that were taught 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago in religion. Like they don't apply the same place that they do now. It's a whole different world, different understanding, and we have more technology at our disposal than ever before. And I think that might be one of the contributing factors where we're seeing some of like the friction that is developing in at our understanding of these things. But that's why personally I do this podcast, because I try to elevate conversation above debate, rather than let's argue until we all agree and decide on one thing and censor and cancel and mob and pitchforks everybody we disagree with. Let's continue to explore and talk about them. And the conversations are fluid.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Friends and I started a few years ago a group called Great Minds Think Differently, where we were realizing that it was headed this way, where, these echo chambers were being created and everyone was just shutting out or unfriending on Facebook or just like, focusing only on what they wanted, and the only opinions they wanted to hear were ones that agreed with them. And this was a group of Republicans and Democrats and atheists and religious people who just wanted to have meaningful conversations. We went to there was a salon night that was literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people showed up to this thing that only had like room for like 500 people. It was an all-night museum salon that was advertised, and there was so much demand for it. So some friends and I like waited outside for hours just to get in to hear some stuff. From like 3 a.m. we finally got in.
Yeah.
And we were just listening to like hour-long talks, is like not quite TED Talks, but just a whole bunch of people talking about different ideas. And we realized there was so much demand for this. So we started this thing. This is probably about 8, 9, 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
We don't really do much with it now, but I value conversation and open ideas so much more than what we get now, which is, like you described, cancel culture. And this is on both sides. This is not, left or right. This is just, if you believe that your way is the only way and you're not going to listen to or give anyone else the chance to express their thoughts, their opinions, their feelings, then, the world shouldn't have time for you. It's not the other way around.
Yeah. 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 And my feeling, I mean, this is like a whole, this topic itself could be a whole podcast series. Sure. Like I definitely I feel like it's not even necessarily that we have to say that people that we aggressively and strongly disagree with should have the same access or whatever. It's if somebody's racist or, spreading hate, yada, yada. What my stance on it is that censoring them just doesn't work. If you want your better ideas to spread, censoring and canceling people you disagree with, no matter how heinous their ideas are, it doesn't work. It just pushes them underground and it makes them stronger.
Yeah, which is why I think having Trump as a president brought a lot of those people out of the woodwork.
Oh yeah.
So I hope people are taking notes and saying and keeping track of what people are writing online, because those people who are shadows during a different presidency are showing the true colors now.
Yeah, they just came to the surface. I want to ask you about Mensa.
Sure.
So you were involved with Mensa from youth. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about listeners who are not familiar with Mensa?
Sure. Mensa is an international high IQ society. You have to score in the top 2% of an accepted standardized exam. For me, I think it was my SATs back when they accepted those.
Right.
Could be LSAT, could be MCATs, could be an IQ test, or if you haven't taken or scored well enough in any of those, you can sit for the Mensa test. And the Mensa test is basically an IQ test administered, every week or two in different places. And you're allowed to take it once. If you score high enough, you're eligible to join. And it's really, a lot of people have ideas that it's like a bunch of eggheads sitting around a table figuring out the world's solutions. But the idea that the mission of Mensa is really to study intelligence, to provide social activities for intelligent people, and also to work together to solve many of the world's problems. Here in New York, we try to focus on all of them, but for the most part, we do a lot of social activities, and a lot of them have nothing to do with intelligence. Like we'll go axe throwing, or we have before the pandemic, we were doing a third Thursday at Barcade, just, hanging out, drinking, playing games. Board games, of course, is really big. And I've been active in Mensa for at least 20 years at this point.
Right.
I went on Long Island, and it was really weird, and I was super young, and everyone was elderly. And I had some interesting conversations, but I was thinking to myself, man, I wouldn't really want to hang out with this group. But then when I moved into the city, I went to another event, and there were younger people, and there were attractive people, and there were interesting people, and I kind of felt like this was, as weird as each of us were, and as individual as each of us were, we bonded over intelligence, but we had a lot of different interests. So we don't talk about being smart. We talk about, board games. We talk about politics. We talk about stocks. We talk about whatever, interests us. We just have a better way, I think, of communicating and picking up what the other one's putting down.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it's just another social group.
Right. You get to almost, for lack of a better description, skip past some of the social pleasantries that. And I mean, I'm imagining kids that have struggled with this, but get to work past some of those things and just get into the topics that make your brains fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's definitely a parallel between polyamory and Mensa, because the idea that you have to do what someone else says is very traditional. But once you're able to think for yourself, either because you've figured it out on your own, or you've learned, or you had positive mentors, and you learn that you don't have to do what everyone else tells you. You can think of your own ways and interact with other people who feel the same as you.
Yeah.
That applies just as well to either organization.
Yeah. Tell me about the Mensa camp that you were with your first year.
A shack of sit, because no matter how smart you are, you love dumb puns. We had about
fantastic.
80 people, maybe 70. I'm still in touch with some of them. Most of them were West Coast. It was a regular Burning Man camp. I don't even know that they did anything particularly intelligent. Their offering was, and it's funny because they actually had been on Esplanade, which would have been a very different experience for my first burn. But the year I went, they were in like D and 8 or something like that, 7:30 and D. And what they offer was Wi-Fi, shade, and massage tables. So none of that has anything to do with anything intelligent. It was just a group
Really
of
Wi-Fi?
Yeah. To be honest, you know what's really funny? It might have totally been an in joke.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I got Wi-Fi.
Because
Because I wasn't even thinking about it. Because my first burn, I'm running around, I'm not checking my internet.
Yeah.
But you know what's really funny? It might have completely been one of those bullshit Wi-Fi camps.
You're literally having this realization right now.
Right now, after 2012, I'm realizing they were fucking with me.
Dude, oh my God. I remember. That's hilarious.
I just figured that out. Thank you for ruining my life.
Dude, I just remembered there's a diner that had Wi-Fi, and they had like the router set up so regularly they get people that are sitting around trying to connect to their Wi-Fi, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, they're resetting it. Don't worry, it'll be up in a second." And so people just sit there all day, and then after a while, it dawns on them that there is no Wi-Fi and they're just being fucked with.
It's really funny. I realized that the password that they put on there was like, with all the ampersands instead of the C's or whatever. It was like go fucking outside or something like that. Yeah, it just hit me.
This exact moment is one of my favorite moments in the history of Burner Podcast. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I think. Sack of shit. You sack of shit.
So where did you get the insane idea that it would be a good idea to start your own camp?
Well, when I came home after 2012's burn, I was like telling everyone and their mother about how great it was and what the experience was like. And I was trying to explain it and I couldn't. I said, why don't you just come back with us next year? And enough people were like, okay, well, where would we go? How would we camp? I'm like, well, I guess you couldn't really all camp with the Mensa camp because you got to be a Mensa member. I could maybe bring one guest, but I had like 20, 30 people off the bat that were like, okay, I've always been curious, or maybe, it sounds interesting and we trust your judgment. That was their first mistake. And I was like, all right, well, let me see if we can find a camp to camp with. And then somebody said, Leon, why don't you just start your own camp? And it didn't even occur to me. I'm like, that's got to be too hard. That's got to be like, why? Why would we do that? Like, we don't have any mission. It's not like I need to tell people about X and we're going to focus the whole camp on X.
Right.
It was just like somebody. I was sitting with one of my friends, and I told her about this, and I don't think she'd ever been, but in fact, maybe she has since. But we were talking about Burning Man, and she's like, "Well, why don't you just start your own?" And I was like, "All right, but what would the theme be?" So we were just throwing things around, and I was thinking, I was just watched the movie Johnny Dangerously. I said we could be New York Dangerously, and then. I don't remember either she or I was like, well, it could just be dangerous, like the New York Dangerous. And apparently there used to be some kind of like social scene called the New York Dangerous. But I didn't know about that then. I was just like, all right, we could be New York Dangerous. Yeah. And we could do dangerous things. So I was like, oh, wait, what about all the things your mom warned you about? Like what not to do? Like don't run with scissors, don't play with matches, don't sit too close to the TV. And we started like just brainstorming this, like what can we do that would be really fun on Playa. So we came up with this list of things: running with scissors relay race, like a vending machine with free candy, called Strangers with Candy. So we wound up doing all of these things. And Kathy didn't camp with us that year, or ever for that matter, but that started it. And I spoke to a couple of my friends. One of them was from Mensa. Her name was Minda. And one of them was Carlos. He goes by Cosmos. And he has a loft that he manages, a Union Square loft in New York City, where they have a lot of, focus groups and smaller groups rent it out, and they sometimes use it for like commercials and shooting ads and stuff. But it was a great opportunity to kind of put together everyone's different strengths. Like I was all full of ideas and energy, and Cosmos had this space to have camp events and meetings. And Minda was like an infrastructure kind of person. She helped us design our first shade structure, and obviously super smart. She had a lot of ideas and could bounce things off each other. So the three of us worked together, and I pitched the idea to them, and they said, sure, let's try it. So our very first year, we had 32 people that camped with us. It was me and 31 of my friends, basically.
Yeah.
We had shitty pink tents that blew apart at the first wind. Of course, we didn't know that.
Can I also? I'm sorry. So that's 2012.
2013
13
was the first year for New York Dangerous.
So is it like you and 22 virgins?
It was me, and it was me, and there were a total of 32 of us. We managed to bring a couple people who had been before, like Cosmos had been before. We had a couple of other people who had been before, but nobody with like tons of experience.
Right.
And we just kind of said, all right, we're going to need this, that, and the other. And we just kind of put stuff together. We said, all right, fuck it. We're a camp. We are New York Dangerous.
Sounds dangerous.
And we got some, one of my friends put together a logo, which actually became our logo. It was basically the Statue of Liberty. Instead of holding up a torch, he was holding up a chainsaw against the New York City skyline. And we've incorporated some version of that in every year. Like every year we have a slightly different logo based on the theme of the camp. Like iRobot, we had like a robot theme. Like I think, I don't even know. Every year I wear a different one. And I've been wearing this one for 3 years now because there's been no goddamn burns.
Yeah.
But I'm wearing like a little leather necklace that it's from the Transformation one. It's a phoenix with like a New York Dangerous skull rising from the ashes.
Nice.
It's not. We're no costume cult, but we try to take some pride in the cool swag we can come up with.
Yeah.
So that was our first year. We had a lot of stuff that we learned on the fly. Our art project was this guy, Rich Praviti, who's been to every single New York Dangerous burn that there has been. So he and I are the only two that have been to everyone. Even Cosmos missed one. We've had some people that have been to nearly everyone, but me and Rich are the only last holdouts. Anyway, so his art project was the Tower of Toys. Now, I didn't know what the Tower of Toys was. I had to look it up when I got back. But apparently there was like this tower, like this wooden tower. It was basically just a whole bunch of 2x4s nailed together with toys nailed to them. And he grew up in the East Village. He's actually a real New York City guy. He's a little older than I am. So for him, like this was like a really powerful, impactful piece of New York City being brought to the playa. And he spent the entire 4 or 5 first days basically building this Tower of Toys. The rest of us like biking around and exploring the playa, and he's just building this shitty pile of 2x4s that he's just nailing together. And it just basically looked like nothing. It was nothing, but to him it was super impactful. Yeah. So we wound up turning this little shitty tower into like a DJ booth, and we hung a little LED like ball from the top, and we just started playing music there. Like that was the extent of our interaction the first year, beyond like the strangers with candy and whatever. And we've grown a lot over the years. But that was 2013. We had 32 people. The next year we had 64. The year after that we had 84. Wow. The year after that we had 103. And we've always been somewhere between like 80s to low hundreds. We realized we have actually, at this point, we have the infrastructure to take as many as like 150. We've got like military style tents. We've got a military parachute. We have, we had professional fridge and freezer and like all these things that we've made into like this massive setup. So we can feed hundreds of people easy. But we also always wanted to keep a small camp feel. We want everyone to be responsible for whatever they volunteer for. We want everyone to be a volunteer. We don't want sparkle ponies. We want everyone to contribute in their own way, not just to their own experience, but we want the camp to be part of their experience. So we've always tried to keep a very, intimate feel, and we want everyone to take on a significant amount of responsibility. So we keep our dues super low. They're one of the lowest of like the bigger New York camps. But we expect a lot out of our campers. And that's been a big recurring theme for New York Dangerous through the years.
Yeah, I've seen a pattern a lot of times with camps that I've interviewed where they'll start kind of like the way that you did, and then the following year they'll shoot overboard, and they'll learn very quickly that having more numbers does not make the camp better. In fact, it increases the chances of you having complete waste of space.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And then go back, like then they scale it in.
Yeah, we luckily had. We've been very lucky in that we have amazing leadership. And even though some people have come, some people have gone, people have taken their leadership roles seriously for the most part. And we've had some very poor decisions. We had an issue a few years ago where the guy who we said, all right, you can be a camp lead, you can help us design infrastructure. And he just took the whole camp under his, he's like, all right, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And we're like, no, don't do any of those things. And he did it. And he just spent thousands of dollars on whatever he felt like. He collected money himself. And there's this whole issue of somebody completely overstepping their limitations that they had agreed to. So we learned a lot from that. We have to learn very carefully who we trust. We can't just say, okay, this person is a burner, and even if their heart's in the right place, they have to make sure their head's in the right place too, because there's a lot of people who may think they're doing the right thing, but will absolutely screw you over.
Yeah. What was the, I understand the lesson, but like, what is the executable advice, I guess, that you learned from that experience? Like, how do you do that?
From that experience, even somebody, and this is a guy who'd camped with us for like 3 or 4 years.
You had no reason to not believe that he'd be a great leader.
In fact, he's very intelligent. Mm-hmm. And as a person, if we had no interaction, like if I didn't have to trust him or know how distrustful his actions would be, I would think that he is extremely capable. In fact, I think he could have been one of our best leads if he didn't basically try to co-opt the entire camp and make it his camp. He had no idea how to work as part of a team.
Right.
And that is kind of our thing. So to see somebody go rogue like that was incredibly painful for us and for the other leads.
Is that something that you can preempt, or is it something you just have to basically experience? And
if you see red flags, listen to them. And if other people tell you red flags about this person, listen to them.
Right.
There have been other situations where a few years ago we had a guy who, now I'm on the autism spectrum, so I see things very black and white and very clearly, very logical sometimes. And if somebody shows me how I'm wrong, I will readily acknowledge that I'm wrong. I don't need to be right. But to me, things seem pretty clear most of the time. And there was another kid who didn't really know much about his background, but he seemed pretty interested. He seemed supportive, and he pulled me aside. He said, listen, I'm on the spectrum. I heard you are too. I know that I'm awkward socially, and I was hoping you could help me. So in some situations, we had some, I saw some red flags about this kid, but he was always responsible. He showed up to his shifts. He did his things. And nobody had any actual complaints about him. It was always, oh, I heard this, or I think that. And I was like, well, you know what? If you have a real complaint, talk to us, but don't tell me he's awkward or he makes you feel weird, because of course he's autistic. Of course he feels weird. What did he actually do?
Yeah.
And because I thought I was a mentor role with this kid, like I ignored some red flags, and it wound up blowing up because he didn't do anything on play. He didn't do anything with us, but he did. It came to the point where he violated people's trust and he violated consent. And it turns out that in the past he had hidden from us that he had a very checkered past, that wound up with him like leaving medical school and getting kicked out of different communities. He had explained it was just because he was awkward and weird and autistic. So I was like, listen, I understand. Right. We won't judge you based on anything but your activities here. But it came out after the fact that he did violate people's confidence. He did things that could not be explained away. And we wound up eventually kicking him out of the camp, because even with his disability, he still needed to act in a way that was responsible. Right. And I acknowledge that it was a learning experience for me, because luckily, like I said, nothing happened at camp. He didn't, all these red flags that I should have listened to didn't actually happen.
Right.
But I started listening to people more and trusting my own judgment less.
Yeah. The what I'm grasping from what you're explaining here is that we can't 100% know anything about people. We kind of we do our best judgment. But what I'm observing is that you folks are actually stepping into the difficult conversations with each other in order to address difficult topics about people that are in the camp. And I definitely have observed camps over the years that have a difficult time doing that. And that's where you see the toxicity expand if you don't nip it in the bud right away. And it is tough. It is uncomfortable. It's difficult to have the conversations. But what I'm grasping, and please correct me if I'm not reading this right, is that you can't 100% know, but you review the lessons and you come together as a community in your leadership and make a decision based on the evidence as it's presented itself to the best of your abilities.
I think a lot of people don't like evidence, especially these days, whether you want to call it cancel culture or mob rule or whatever. I think a lot of people will look at a situation, they will apply their own preconceived ideas or experiences to a situation and be like, oh, I've seen this situation before, it's X. You have to listen to people because their insights are different from yours, and you need to be able to evaluate. But also, you shouldn't be making unilateral decisions. You should be making them as part of a team. And if somebody feels very strongly about a person or a situation, maybe you should don't give them the final decision, but also you shouldn't have the final decision either. You should put it up to the team.
Right.
So that way it's the team and the camp's responsibility to make a decision like, is this person a problem? Should we give a certain person this responsibility, or should they be allowed to camp with us at all?
Mm-hmm.
These are big decisions and should not be made by one person unilaterally.
Yeah. Do you have a system in place to get people's feedback in the camp?
We do now. In fact, the person who left was instrumental in helping build a code of conduct, which we all agreed upon and we use going forward. We also, every year we have multiple team leads. And I remain like the camp, like I hold the purse strings, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I'm the corporate holder because we are incorporated. But I don't make unilateral decisions. Even back then, I didn't try to. But we're very clear that everyone has a role, even the campers, even if they're not leads. And we try to incorporate everyone's responsibilities. Plus, we have, when it comes to membership, we have teams that don't include me.
Right.
Knowing that I'm autistic, I know my limitations, that I'm on the spectrum. I may not be full-on autistic. I'm what's called PDD-NOS. It's pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. So it's sort of like, you know how Wesley Snipes was like daywalker? He could he was a vampire, so he had some limitations, but he also had certain powers. But he could also do things that other vampires couldn't.
Right.
So I can do things and think in ways that like Aspergery and like autistic people can't, but I still think the same way. And my brain still has certain limitations and blind spots. So I don't make decisions. I may provide input, but I'm not a decision maker for membership, for example.
Right.
That's an accommodation we made as part of a camp.
That's fascinating because you yourself are aware of your own limitations and processing that information. I want to transition to kind of seeing like where where the charity came from, and where did the idea for the charity come about? When did it get founded?
I think the biggest difference for my world in the default with my world on Playa was that on Playa, like everyone thought the way I did, or at least had the same core principles. But I realized that in the default world, a lot of people don't think about civic responsibility. They don't think about gifting, and they don't think about decommodification. So my girlfriend, who camped with us in 2015 and 2016, who eventually became a fiancée, who eventually became my wife, and who eventually became the co-founder of our charity, she and I were talking about ways to bring the Playa to the default world. And when we got engaged in the end of 2016, this is kind of a crazy story, and I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version of it. The day after we got engaged, like I proposed to her, she said yes. She wasn't feeling well, and the next morning she couldn't get out of bed, and I went to work and I came back and she still hadn't left the bed, and we were like, something's wrong. So we took a cab to Bellevue Hospital, which is like the free hospital, because she was from China. She wasn't a citizen. She didn't have insurance. So we went to like the free hospital, and they said, well, she's dehydrated. She has really high calcium. We don't know what's going on. So they kept her overnight for observation. And then another night while they were running tests, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. They wound up keeping her there for 10 days. And after the third day, they said, all right, well, let's run a PET scan. Let's see what's going on. Turns out she had 70 metastatic tumors throughout her body. Her lungs, liver, ovary, and...
70?
Yeah. And we had no idea.
Oh, my gosh.
And they said, well, there's nothing we can do for you. I mean, this is terminal. It's too far gone. We can't even type it. It's super aggressive. They didn't even know where it came from. They just knew that these tumors are very quickly growing and there's nothing they can do. They would give her palliative care, basically just pain relievers until she died. And they said it could be a matter of weeks or months.
Wow.
And we had no expectations. Like everyone's like, wow, congratulations. Like our Facebook post with the ring saying she said yes had like 1,500 likes. Like this is like complete one end of the spectrum to the other. And we had no idea what to do. So I kept going to like camp events and social events. And she was in the hospital and like, everyone's like, where's Johan? Oh, she's not feeling well. I'll tell her you say hi, that sort of thing. And we didn't know what to do. And this is at the end of October. And I finally posted one post on Facebook saying, hey guys, I have to say, we're completely overwhelmed. This is the situation. If anyone can help us, please do. And based on that one post, it went around the world somehow. People raised tens of thousands of dollars for her medical care. Somebody knew somebody who was the head of Memorial Sloan Kettering admissions. And she reached out to him, who reached out to the guy and said, hey, can you consider, Bellevue's saying she's a lost cause. Can you do something for her? Somebody else who used to work for Chuck Schumer's office, he's the congressperson, the senator actually, and I knew congressperson who was in the area, and Carolyn Maloney and Chuck Schumer worked together with her family's, their counterparts in China, and they flew her family here in like less than a week. People, a girl who I had gone on an OkCupid date once upon a time 20 years earlier, we'd still just kept in touch on Facebook or whatever. She saw that, she's like, listen, I'm a wedding planner now. Can I help you plan a wedding so you can get married? And literally from the time she wrote me to the time we had a wedding, it was 7 days. She put together a wedding for 200 people in person, hundreds more watching online.
Wow.
Everything was donated. The venue, the food, the ice, the chairs, the band, everyone was just volunteering to just come together. People knew, like, she wasn't able to have, she wasn't able to be around since, so nobody who was sick could come. And this is basically, we had to treat it like a pandemic before pandemic. Yeah. Nobody could wear any colognes or perfumes. Nobody could wear flowers. We couldn't have a bouquet. So friends of mine stayed up for days, like sewing bouquets out of fake flowers for her and for the other people attending. People volunteered to officiate the wedding. People I grew up with who were wedding officiators. Just people came out of nowhere, and it was like this burner spirit of working together as the community to make something happen. And people are saying this is miraculous that this thing happened. And neither Yuan, my wife, nor I were into the supernatural. We're just not. Like, I was raised Jewish, but I was more culturally Jewish than anything. That I didn't believe in like an imaginary guy pulling strings. Yeah. And if you really want to not believe in like a benevolent deity, let your fiance get terminal cancer, right? That's a pretty surefire way to know that there's no God, if you want to think of it that way. Yeah. But neither of us thought of it that way. We were just like, you know what? The reason each of these amazing things has happened is because people made it happen, just like on Playa. Somebody came up with the idea, hey, let's throw a wedding, and they made it happen. Somebody said, hey, let's raise money. Let's arrange for food. Let's reach out and see who knows somebody at Memorial Sloan Kettering who can try to give her a chance with chemo or something, some kind of treatments. And all these things happened because people made them happen. Wow. So we wrote our own vows and we exchanged vows. And then we added to that, we vowed to our guests that we would find a way to pay forward the support and love that we got from people around the world. We would find a way to pay it forward. And we got married in November, and in January, the House of Good Deeds was incorporated. Wow. And we have 10 principles based loosely on the 10 principles of Burning Man, which we thought would be a really good series of a code to live by in the default world that would kind of give people both the benefit of improving the world with an altruistic mindset. So we created this organization. It's actually, technically, it's a religion. There's Buddhism, there's Judaism, and there's altruism. So as an altruist, I believe it is our responsibility, because it is our ability, to improve the world through service to others and through helping others. And that could look like, planning a wedding for somebody. It could look like picking up a piece of trash and throw it in the garbage. It could look like anything. And that's what we do now. That's what the whole mission of the House of Good Deeds is, to encourage and enable opportunities for altruism.
Wow, that's absolutely spectacular. That's
what we do.
Oof. Okay, you said this was 4 years ago?
Yeah, 2017, January 2017. It's now 2021.
Well, let's close out your story. What's been going on in the past 4 years with the charity and
Everything. It's been getting very.
your wife. I mean,
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, Yuan passed away that year.
Yeah.
She passed away 5 months after she was diagnosed. The House of Good Deeds' first public-facing event was giving away everything she owned.
Wow.
It was a public event, and it was held at the House of Yes. We actually did a giveaway there, and we also collected donations. And the House of Yes hosted that, and people are like, "Wow, I love your story. I'm so sorry," etc. But people were like, "Listen, I've always been looking for an opportunity to volunteer. I've always looking for an opportunity to, to give things away instead of throwing them out." Like, we touched a lot of nerves. I think the story opened people's ears, but the concept of altruism opened people's eyes, and they're like, you know what? We can do this. Like, I've always wanted to, but I've really never had an opportunity. And some of our volunteers are people that were involved with me and Yuan, who knew us, including people that we were both dating, are still involved because we were in an open relationship. We were polyamorous. Our director of donations and my current girlfriend, who I've been dating for 5 years, is somebody that I was dating while I was dating Yuan, Patrizia, and she's been one of our most stalwart volunteers. Like, the people that are most involved are people who know me and Yuan, but there's also amazing volunteers that we've accumulated over the years who just believe in what we do. And a lot of them are in the burner community. Either they've camped with the New York Dangerous or want to. But a lot of people just have no interest in Burning Man, but just really love the idea of improving the world through helping others. Right. And we have, in addition to rescuing half a million pounds of items, we've, especially during the pandemic, we've totally ramped things up because there's so many stores and restaurants and businesses going out of business. And we just swoop in, we rescue them. We have a cargo van, and we have a 24-foot school bus that we've artfully painted up and graffitied, and we drive around rescuing things, and we give everything away for free. In the concept of decommodification, we don't sell anything. Yeah. Every month we do a Good Deeds giveaway. It's like a massive garage sale where we give away everything we've collected. Everything is free. We also do neighborhood cleanups and blood drives, and May was bicycle month, so we're collecting bike helmets, and next Sunday we're going to be giving away free bike helmets to bikers on the West Side Highway that don't have helmets. Wow. And these are all ideas that people just came up with, just like at Burning Man. Like, what can we do to create a playa? We just apply to what can we do to create a better world,
right? And
we do it. And there's really nothing standing between anyone listening to this and doing the same thing we're doing, but themselves. If you have an idea, find people who share your idea and do it.
That's amazing. And you're in the default world. You said you're an attorney.
I am.
So so that's the full-time job.
Actually, it's not. My full-time job, I'm a real estate broker.
Okay.
I run a real estate brokerage called Masonic Realty. Okay. The lawyer thing is just kind of like in my back pocket if I need it. Okay. I do occasionally use it, but not often. But my full-time passion is this charity, is the House of Good Deeds. It doesn't bring in any money, but that's kind of the point. I don't need it to. And I am writing a book, a relationship book based on the TED Talk.
Yeah. And on top of that, running the camp.
Yeah.
Which for a lot of people is a full-time job.
Honestly, it feels like I have many full-time jobs. I'm sort of thankful that the burn's been canceled the last couple of years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because it's an insane amount of work, and anyone listening who's been involved in a camp lead position knows what I'm talking about. You are thinking about the camp. You are planning things year round.
And then on top of all that, polyamory. Like, where are you finding the time?
I'm multitasking.
All of this?
I'm multitasking. In fact, right now, while we're having a meaningful conversation, I'm saying, "Hey, please push our 2 o'clock to 2:15 so I can keep talking to you."
You are.
I'm very good at multitasking. Well, I just have to be.
Insane.
I text while I drive. Don't text while you drive, people. Don't do this. This is only for Mensa level people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But I just, you know what? I would rather be double booked than bored, I often say. Mm-hmm. And I've been blessed with a brain that I think because of it being on a spectrum, I'm very good at compartmentalizing and making sure things get done. And occasionally things do fall through the cracks. And I apologize to the people in my life who have sometimes been made to feel like they're not as much of a priority as I believe they are.
Yeah.
But it is really important to me to do all of these things. And maybe it's just me that the year sped by so fast, but I can't believe it's June. But I am super proud of everything that we've done with New York Dangerous. I'm super proud of everything we've done with the House of Good Deeds. And I'm looking forward to being proud of myself when I finally finish this damn book, because I'm nearly done. I have literally only a few pages left, and then I'm just going to edit, and then I'm just going to scroll through the whole thing, make sure it's readable, and then I'm either going to self-publish or I'm going to work with one of the bigger publishing houses. It depends. It's just been such a lower priority. Like if I were anyone else, this would be like my magnum opus. This is my life's work, because I feel like I have so much to share based on, 15 years as a polyamorous person.
Right.
There's so much that I can teach somebody, like, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. It's like Poly Smarts for Amorous Hearts. That's the working title of the book. It's like, this is what I have to teach regular people about their own relationships. And I know so much, and I just want to share it.
Yeah.
But I have other priorities, and there's just not enough hours in the day.
Okay, so we're nearing sort of the end of our conversation here. Can you pick out 3 quick bites from the lessons in your book that people could potentially execute that are listening to this podcast immediately?
Yeah, and like I said, they're not just for poly people, they're for people.
Sure.
The most important thing in having healthy relationships with others is having a healthy relationship with yourself. Try to scrape away what you've been socialized and understand what really matters to you as a person. You have needs and wants, and they're probably not what you think they are. Spend some time sitting with yourself. If you have different, if you're into meditation or whatever, but look inward and figure out what is most important to you and why. Once you can identify all the whys in your life, find ways to become confident in knowing what is a need, understand what is only a want, and then share that information with everyone everyone who's in your life. And you will start attracting the people to you, both in terms of like intimate relationships and friendships and work relationships, whatever it is that you're looking for. As long as you tell people what you want, you will attract people to you who want those things, and you will also empower those people in your life to tell you what they want. Another thing is, I think it's really important not to judge people by the same standards you would judge yourself. I think it's really important to understand not everyone has to be what you want them to be. I think it's important to value people for what they provide in your life, and vice versa, without trying to force or label anyone in your life to be something that they're not.
Right.
So I'd go with those 2. And the third is probably, don't be afraid. When you know something that works for you, don't be afraid of it. Don't let anyone or anything keep you from pursuing the thing that you know will make you truly feel satisfied in your life. Because many of us have things that we're shooting towards, or maybe we're just coasting. But when you find something that really matters to you, follow it. And don't let anyone stop you.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Leon, thank you so much. This is a tour de force conversation.
We did kind of cover a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah, and I expected that we would be done sooner than normal, because there's a lot to digest, and I want to thank you for your candidness and openness, and thank you for all the work, of course, that you're doing. And I knew I was going to sit down with the camp founder, but I had no idea that I'd get into some of the stuff that we got into, especially this amazing charity that you're running, and my honor to share the story.
Yeah, please do.
And thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate this. I appreciate your time.
Sure. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure to speak to you, and this is the first time meeting face to face, so that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Can I mention a couple of things about the camp and
please.
the charity? So we are planning on going back. We were thinking about New York Dangerous was thinking about doing like a trip to the Burn this year, which still might happen even though the Burn's not. But as of right now, we are doing Elevate, which is a upstate New York trip over the 4th of July weekend. If anyone's interested in checking that out, we have a New York Dangerous page on Facebook. It's just facebook.com/ I think it's group/New York Dangerous. You could just find it. It's not hard to find New York Dangerous online. You could also go to nyd.nyc for the camp.
It's a great acronym, by the way.
Isn't it great?
That's awesome.
If you're interested in learning more about the charity, it's House of Good Deeds. So we are the House of Good Deeds on both Instagram and Facebook. We are houseofgooddeeds.org. I actually have a meeting in 15 minutes to talk about upgrading our website because it sucks. We know it sucks. We're working on it. If anyone has any website building experience or basically any nonprofit experience or any experience with doing anything at all, please, come volunteer with us. We'd love your insight. If you're a grant writer, if you're a outreach person, if you have any skills whatsoever, or if you just want to get off your ass and contribute to the community, please reach out to us. info@houseofgooddeeds.org, or just find us online and message us. We'd love to hear from people. We're going to be expanding next year to other cities around the world. We have people that are interested in opening chapters of House of Good Deeds in Georgia, San Francisco, Toronto, Los Angeles, Berlin. We're still a little way away from the crossing the T's and dotting the I's on that, but that's going to happen hopefully in 2022.
Incredible.
We're expecting this to be global. Because there's really no reason it shouldn't be. It's once you look at it as a belief system, I personally don't know many people that are truly on board with their, what they were happen to be just by chance born into. And we don't require people to not believe whatever supernatural magic stuff they want, which is cool. But I do believe that it should be our responsibility as people to care about the world and to care about other people. So if that's something that resonates with you, then please reach out to us and we'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. You just did all my show notes for me.
Yeah, not a problem. So in that case, thanks everyone for listening and enjoy the music. I'm Arash. My guest has been Leon Feingold from New York Dangerous.
Nice. I should wrap it like that. Thank you so much, Leon.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Obviously, we're pretty far past that July event that Leon mentions, but the rest of the stuff still stands. Leon doesn't believe in the supernatural hippie bullshit, but I do. I decided to, at least. When doing research on writing the intro for this show, I Googled catharsis and Burning Man, and as synchronicity would have it, I stumbled upon the art project called Catharsis, which was brought to Burning Man in 2019 by a team of Ukrainian artists. The link to the story about it is over in the show notes. Sure, maybe it's just a coincidence. But I personally like believing that there is something just beyond what we can measure with our five senses. Perhaps learning about this Ukrainian artist burner crew might inspire something in you, listener. Perhaps some resource that you have access to, some call to action within your sphere. You are now listening to the sounds of Alex O's and company. You can find him over at soundcloud.com/real_AlexOs. That's spelled REAL_ALEXOS. The live instrumentation that you're hearing, this whole set, was recorded at Catharsis on the Mall in Washington, D.C. in 2019. Check out our newest offering, Burner Podcast Presents Phoenix Syndrome. It is a monthly podcast miniseries hosted by yours truly and my collaborator Dylan Eccleston. It will document our journey bringing a Metal and Fire Phoenix sculpture to Burning Man 2022. Also, Burner Podcast Presents Alkaline, which had taken a year hiatus, is launching a new season, this time with DJs creating sets around the unifying theme of rebirth. So why all the Phoenix Syndrome stuff? Find out. All these links are over at burnerpodcast.com. Click on Phoenix Syndrome. The whole story is right there. Please do leave us a review on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice, and message us if you want to contribute or support the show in any fashion. You're always invited to pitch interviews in your neck of the woods. Our producers are Louis Gallipo, aka Mulaku, over in Bermuda, and Michael Seth Prell in Austin. The Burner Podcast theme music, America's Horse with No Name Remix, is produced by Joman out of Denver, Colorado, and he is over at soundcloud.com/DJ Joman. Until next time, love, light, and all that other crap. Take it away, Alex O's, James Dank, Disco Valente, and Tori Beek.
is a creative profession. Teaching properly conceived is not a delivery system. You know, you're not there just to pass on received information. Great teachers do that. But what great teachers also do is mentor, stimulate, provoke, engage.
influence to my left. are the gods now.
sleep. There's on it. There's on it. And remember, all the good is just a secret. There's on it. There's on it.
burnerpodcast.com.